Today we are going to walk and talk about sexual orientation with our high school students. Hi, I'm Nadine Thornhill, sexuality educator. Welcome to Safe Sex Ed, the series where I teach every sex education module from Ontario's 2015 Health and Phys Ed curriculum. Are you new? Don't know what's going on? Then click the I up there to get caught up. And if you are new, you can also subscribe, and that way you won't miss any videos. There's a button down below. It's really easy to click. And also click the bell, and then you will be notified whenever a new video is posted. The Health and Phys Ed curriculum for grades 9 through 12 outline the following learning objective for grade 9. Demonstrate an understanding of factors that can influence a person's understanding of their sexual orientation and identify sources of support for all students. Once again, this is one of those learning objectives that in the curriculum document is paired together with gender identity. And as I mentioned a few times, I have decided to separate those two topics because although some people think that they are the same, they are actually different. And so I wanted to tackle them individually. For today's activity, you are going to need some paper. You are going to need a list of sexual orientation terms. You're going to need some markers, and you are going to need a copy of something called a privilege walk. Now, the list of terms and the privilege walk you can find on my website, NadineThornhill.com. There's a link up there, and it will also be down in the description box. Prior to the activity, create a set of sexual orientation cards, and you want to make enough so that everyone in your group can have one. Each card should have a sexual orientation term, so like bisexual or gay or straight, and should also include the definition of that term. If your group is very large, you may have to make duplicates of some of the cards, and that is absolutely fine. Okay, so once your group has come together, assembled, congregated, give each person one sexual orientation card. And then explain that for the purposes of the exercise, they should imagine that that is their sexual orientation. So before you get into the activity, invite any questions that your group may have about what some of the terms mean. And if you need more information on the terms, I will have some resources for you at the end of the video. So stick around. So once everyone has had a chance to ask their questions and have them answered, have everyone line up along a tape line in the middle of the room. I forgot to mention at the beginning, you will also need tape for this activity. And before your class or group comes, you should make a tape line sort of approximately in the middle of your space. So do that before you do all the other things I said to do. Explain that you are going to read a series of statements, and that if people feel that that statement applies to, them and their assumed sexual orientation, they should step forward or step back depending on the instructions included with the statement. The statements and instructions sound like this. If you have ever been called a name because of your sexual orientation, take a step back. If you saw members of your sexual orientation well represented in roles on television and in movies, take a step forward. If you fear personal or social repercussions for bringing your partner to an event like a prom or a dance, take a step backwards. If you can be physically affectionate with your partner in public without fear of stares or hostile comments, take a step forward. Once the activity is over, what you will typically find is that now people are sort of scattered around the room. Some people are in the back, some people are in the middle, some people are further forward. So have everyone stay where they are and ask the group the following questions. What did you notice about who was in the front, who was in the middle, and who was towards the back? How do you feel about your own position in the group? What is something you realized doing this activity that you hadn't realized or thought of before? What has this taught you about the ways that sexual orientation can influence a person's life? Now you can have the group come back together, sit down, get comfortable, and you're going to ask them one last question, which is, what would it mean to have a truly inclusive classroom, a truly inclusive school, community, country, or even a truly inclusive world. If you have students or a group who have disabilities that make it difficult or impossible for them to, step forward, step back, or move through the space in that way, here are a couple of alternatives you could try. You could, give them containers and something to fill the containers, so beads, or if they need something larger, maybe bean bags or large balls, and every time a statement applies to them, they will either, put the thing in the container, or they will take the thing out of the container. You can also have participants raise their hands every time a statement applies to them and keep a tally. Now, if you are going to do it in that way, then you have to frame all of the statements as sort of positives or step forward type statements. It can also be really valuable and really interesting to have a conversation about intersectionality. So, to talk to students and have a conversation about, how a person's race or ethnicity, or their religion, or their economic status, or their physical ability, or their body size or shape, or their age might influence their experience or their understanding of their sexual orientation. If you are a parent or caregiver and you really want to signal to your child that you will accept them no matter what their sexual orientation, something I mentioned in the last video is, try to avoid then making assumptions about their sexual orientation unless they have told you that they hold a certain sexual orientation. Also know that sometimes it is a process, coming to fully understand our sexual orientation. And a lot of teens are just at the beginning of that process. And so if they are talking to you about their orientation and, the information changes or evolves over time, know that that's pretty normal and that's pretty understandable. And again, just, affirm and accept them along the way. If inclusivity and celebrating diverse sexual orientations is important to you, model that for your kids, let them know that that's how you feel. If you are straight, I encourage you to even go beyond that, because it's awesome to, tell your kids that, hey, I accept you no matter what your sexual orientation is, or, hey, I am totally in favor of gay marriage. But there are other things you can do. If you're able, I invite you to consider contacting your local LGBTQ organization and finding out how you can support them. They might need volunteers, they might need financial support. And if you do get involved, be sure to let the LGBTQ folk at the organization take the lead and let you know how you can best be of service, and then do those things. If you're a person who likes to post, articles on your social media, which I do, make an effort to find articles that are written by actual queer, LGBTQ folks, amplify their voices, promote their work. So if condemning or persecuting or, erasing and ignoring folks who are not heterosexual aligns with your values, then I'm not gonna give you any tips, because I think that's bigotry and that violates my values. So if you want to have a conversation with your teens about sexual orientation, you can certainly use any of the questions that I mentioned in the activity portion of the video, but here are a couple more. What do you think about the labels we use to refer to people's sexual orientations? How do you think a person knows or figures out what their sexual orientation is? Sorry, I've done a lot of these videos and I'm a little punchy. All right. But some resources for you. Purdue University has a comprehensive list of sexual and gender identity terms. Now, it's not necessary that you read this list and memorize every term, but if you're reading an article and you come across, a sexual orientation term that you're not familiar with, if your kid comes to you and says, I hold this identity, and you're like, I don't really know what that means, you can consult this list and, get a brief definition of what that term generally means about someone's sexual orientation. Teen Vogue published an article a while back called Pansexuality and Pansexual, Everything You Need to Know. Now, it's not quite everything you need to know about pansexuality, but again, it's a really interesting article. It gives a really easy to understand overview of what it means to be pansexual, and there are some interviews with pansexual youth which you might find illuminating. PFLAG Canada is a nonprofit organization founded and run by parents of LGBTQ youth or who have LGBTQ kids, who want to better understand and support their kids. There's a great book called Queer, the Ultimate LGBTQ Guide for Teens. Now, despite the title, I also think this is a great book for adults. I read it as an adult. I learned a ton, and you might find this helpful, particularly if you have LGBTQ teens in your life, and again, you want to sort of better understand their experience. This is a great first book to read. Another really interesting book, it's short, easy to read, is called Straight, A Short History of Heterosexuality. So it talks about, where the term heterosexuality came from, and, just sort of gives a history of, that idea of being straight or being heterosexual. Someone asked me recently why I don't include links to the books I recommend in the description box. And I don't do that because I don't really want to direct people to any particular site to buy their books. People, like to buy their books different places. And so I just include the names and the titles. And then if people want to order them, I like to let them sort of go to whatever site they want to go to. In the comments below, let me know if you have ever had a conversation with a family member about sexual orientation and how it went. I have had many, a lot of heated, passionate debates. I've had some, really quiet, intimate confessions, but I've talked to my family about sexual orientation a lot. That's all for now. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you soon. Bye.
You can help me continue creating free sex ed content by supporting me on Patreon. For as little as $3 a month, you'll get access to all sorts of goodies, so head on over to patreon.com/Nadine Thornhill or click the link down in the description below.